Hey guys, I'm Shubhajit from Digit.in and our topic of discussion today is the new Oppo Reno3 Pro. Now this is a smartphone that just launched in the Indian smartphone market and Oppo is throwing in some big numbers, especially around the camera of this phone. Why does it do so? It's primarily because the primary sensor here is a 64 megapixel Samsung GW1 sensor, followed by another telephoto lens that can go up to 2x in optical zoom and up to 20x in hybrid zoom. Then there's another 8 megapixel ultra wide sensor and a 2 megapixel black and white sensor that aids in your taking portraits and adding a lot of effects and filter to your photos. Now on the front you have a dual punch hole selfie camera. There's two cameras drilled right into the display. The first one here is a 44 megapixel selfie camera. I'm being told that is the highest a selfie camera has ever gone on a smartphone, and that's coupled with another 2 megapixel depth of field sensor to let you take all those fancy portrait photos from the front camera. Now these are all big numbers and that calls for big investigation, and that's exactly what we did. We tested the camera out across more or less most of the common situations, taking photos of things that we encounter mostly in our daily lives. But before we begin, I just want to take the time out to thank you guys for all the feedback that you guys left in our videos that we published last week. Thank you so much for that, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to keep up to date with all our results from our test lab. Now with that out of the way, let's begin. Let's start with the 64 megapixel camera. The 64 megapixel camera on the Reno3 Pro is made by Samsung. It's the ISOCELL GW1 sensor measuring 1 by 1.72 inches in size. That's a lot of surface area to capture a lot more light information and deliver a higher sharpness and details in your images. Does it really do so? In some cases, yes, it does. Photos of buildings, landscapes and the usual sceneries, they come out really nice. You have a lot of good details in your textures, sharpness is right on point, and even the dynamic range is okay to work with. What is not good with the 64MP camera is foliage and flowers. You see, if you take a close-up of a flower, you would want to go close to capture all the nice textures on the flower and everything. You can't do that with this phone. It's because you can't really go much close to your subject. You're using the 64MP lens, and that can cause an issue for a phone at this price. You see, most phones in this price range tend to do foliage and flowers pretty well. So the Oppo Reno3 kind of seems like an outlier in this case. There's also a case of over sharpening when your AI dazzle mode is turned on. Yes, that's a filter that you turn on to increase the vibrance and clarity in your images. That also results in a higher contrast, a lot more saturation and a lot of over processing, especially over sharpening. So your images, when they're over sharpening, it kind of looks like this that you see in your screen. You can control it by turning it off, but know that when you turn it off, your colors also go away with that. So make what you want with that mode. If you want to use it, you can keep it on and you'll get a slightly more saturated photo. Remove it and you'll get a more natural looking photo that again needs a little bit of editing in post to, make it palatable for social media. Apart from that, you have your 68 megapixel bin shots. Yes, that's the USP of the 64 megapixel camera. Of course, it doesn't shoot at 64MP by default. If it does, the file sizes tend to be a lot bigger and will eat up your internal storage space in no time. So what it does is it bins 4 pixels into one. It takes 0.8 micron pixel, that's the default size of the pixels in this sensor, and combines 4 of them to create one large 1.6 micron image. So what that results in is a lot higher detail retention and better sharpness, as you can see from the images on your screen. So let's move on to the 13 megapixel telephoto lens. Now this one has an aperture of f2.4 and can deliver 2x optical zoom and 5x, 10x and 20x hybrid zoom. Now 2x optical zoom is good to work with. Like when the light is good, you get a lot of details and the photos come out really sharp. Now as you go closer and closer with 5x, 10x and 20x, you start losing in the details. Yes, at 5x the image still looks quite sharp by default, but if you zoom in even further, you're going to see the details start to disappear. At 10x and 20x, there's even lesser details, and to be honest, the only good use case I could find of the 20x zoom in this phone is to read hoardings that are far away. Apart from that, you might not be needing the 20x zoom at any point of time. Good part is the 2x optical zoom results in some pretty crisp images. Some of those are outlaid on your screen right now. So now that we have talked about the telephoto lens, let's quickly glance over the ultra-wide lens. The 8MP ultra-wide lens on the Reno3 Pro is actually the weakest of the 4 lenses. Why do we say that? Now, while it takes decent images in the day, you might not find a lot of details in the shot, especially around the edges and at the bottom. Now, you can see from this image in your screen, the building looks nice and sharp, but if you look at the edges, especially at the bottom, which is quite dark, there's no detail whatsoever and it's all smudged. It's sharp by default, but don't try to zoom in is what we would say. Now let's talk about the low light mode, or as what Oppo likes to call it, the ultra night mode. The good thing about the ultra night mode is that it works with all the 4 lenses, including the ultra wide, the 64 megapixel primary, telephoto at 2x, 5x, all the way up to 20x. But the catch is that it's only good enough to be used from just one mode. You see, during the course of our testing, we figured out that the Reno3 Pro that was shipped to us was running on an incomplete software build. Why do we say that? That's because the ultra wide mode, when used in conjunction with the ultra night mode, results in images that look straight out of a Matrix movie. Yes, you can see those images right now on the screen, and it's clear that these images are not the final output that we should expect from a phone priced as high as the Reno3 Pro. If you can look past that, the night mode is actually okay and decent to work with. At 1x, using the 64 megapixel lens with the night mode on, you get decently sharp images that are okay to view by default, but don't try to zoom in, because if you try to zoom in, all the details will be lost right there. But for a phone that costs 30,000, I would expect a lot more from this night mode, to be honest. But the night mode is not its USP. Its USP is 44 megapixel front camera, and it happens to be the world's first smartphone to come with such a large selfie camera. But the catch here is that your selfie still would come out at 10 megapixel because of pixel binning. Plus, more than that, while the promise of a high resolution sensor is always more details and higher sharpness, the AI beautification algorithm that this phone comes with mostly ruins that whole effect. The AI beautification filter will smoothen out the skin, remove all the blemishes, and make you look picture perfect, which is not always the case. You would want some level of realism in your selfies as well, and that's what the Oppo Reno3 Pro does not offer with the AI beautification turned on. Turn it off and you're good to go with some pretty sharp images from the selfie camera. Now let's sum it up. The quad camera stack at the back of the Reno3 Pro is packed with a lot of features, but the performance in itself is quite underwhelming. Yes, it does certain things really nice. We saw the camera take really good photos of buildings, of landscapes, of textures, but where it really fails is in taking photos of close-up shots like a flower or even like bushes and shrubs. And none of the features in the Reno3 Pro managed to really punch above the roof like the first Reno did, the Reno 10x zoom. That's still my favorite from the series, and the Reno3 Pro seems to be like a trickle-down effect of the 10x zoom to a more affordable segment. What it does offer is a lot of good features to entice you in, but the performance in itself leaves a lot to be asked. Now, I still have reasons to believe that this is not the final software that the Reno3 Pro is running right now, and we have reached out to Oppo for an updated statement whether they're going to push out an update on time for the launch. As and when they do respond, we're going to update the comment section with the updated statement, so stay tuned for that. But other than that, we'll also be looking into the performance overall of the Reno3 Pro, see how the MediaTek Helio P95 performs, especially when it comes to gaming, in another video. So stay tuned for that, and do let us know what you thought of this video in the comment section below, and for more videos like this, stay tuned to Digit.in.